How's it going, everybody? I am ZBilbs and I'm back here today with another metal album review video. Today we've got a big one on our hands because Metallica, probably the biggest metal band of all time, has come out with a new album, and that being 72 Seasons. So if you haven't seen me do one of these reviews before, I go through song by song and I give it a rating out of 5. Anything 1 through 5 is a song worth listening to. If it's not worth listening to, I give it a skip. At the end, I tally up the points, and I'll give it a final score, and I'll give final thoughts. Now, there's a lot of songs on this album, so I'll try to get enough thoughts in, but I'm probably going to try to be quick and precise, so I might not cover everything too in depth. But yeah, either way, let's just jump into the review. Starting off with their first track on the album, that is the title track, 72 Seasons. Now, right off the bat, this album makes a pretty good splash because I think this is probably one of their better albums, one of their better songs on the album. 72 Seasons. I did not like this song at first. This was the 4th single that they released, and I was very much lukewarm on it. Mostly because it reminded me very much off of Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I thought it was Spit Out the Bone at first, but going back and listening to it, it is almost an identical riff to, oddly enough, the title track Hardwired from Hardwired to Self-Destruct. So I was like, it's just kind of a worse version of Hardwired. But honestly, I've massively warmed up to this song on repeated re-listens to it, because while it is very reminiscent of Hardwired, I am a big fan of Hardwired, at least that song, and I think this is kind of Hardwired, but an even more extended variation of it. It's even more fleshed out. I like the main chorus and the verses even more. I think I even maybe like the main riff a little bit more. So overall, this is one that, it's fast, it's heavy, it's got a really catchy, memorable riff to it. And it's, I think, one of the better ones on the album. I honestly considered giving it a 5 right off the bat, but just because the fact that it is kind of derivative, I can't quite do that. But I am going to give 72 Seasons, the title track, a 4. All right, next up, their second song on the album is Shadows Follow. This was not a single, but honestly, kind of spoiling my thoughts right off the bat, I think this is their best non-single on the album, their best song that was not released as a single. I think this is a really great song. For one of the main reason, I think it might have one of the best, if not the best, just main chorus on the album. It's just incredibly fun, incredibly catchy with Still My Shadows Follow. It's got a really fun and catchy main riff to it too. So overall, I would say while this song doesn't do anything exactly exemplary, something like super just out of the ordinary and crazy, it's just a really consistent, just really fun and solid song that I'm definitely going to be coming back to and listening to many more times. So once again, starting off this album strong, I am going to give Shadows Follow another 4. Moving on to their third song of the album, this was another single that they released, the second one, and that is Screaming Suicide. Well, this sounds like a very dark song. It's actually a very good, uplifting song about a very important message, which is a theme that kind of follows throughout this album. I would say this album overall, little side tangent, it reminds me very much, I think it's a combination of 3 previous Metallica albums, that being Hardwired. It kind of has the same structure and flow to it as Hardwired. It has a lot of riffs that are reminiscent of Hardwired. It reminds me of Load and Reload a bit because I think it's a little bit bloated, just like those albums were. And it also reminds me very much of Saint Anger, believe it or not because of the production and whatnot, but in sort of like the more deep emotional themes. That's the good part of Saint Anger. I'll touch on, there's other stuff that I think it takes from Saint Anger that is not so good, but I'll get to that. But either way, the themes on it, like very much presented in this song, reminds me of Saint Anger. So that's probably one of the most interesting things about this song. It's just very good, very interesting theme, like many other songs in this album. That being said, when I first listened to this song, I don't think I liked almost any of the singles when I first listened to them. Almost all of them grew on me. This one in particular, because James Hetfield's voice just sounds really off. I can't quite tell if they're using some sort of synthesizer on his voice or if he's just really getting old. But this song in particular, most songs, he's got a really, really gravelly sound in his voice. I mean, he's obviously is kind of known for having, that rough, thrashy sounding voice, but this just sounds straight up almost a Lemmy sounding voice. And it's very, very off-putting. And for this song, I think with the kind of style and flow that it goes, I think it more or less works in its favor. But for a lot of other songs, I think James Hetfield's voice it holds back just the lyrics and the choruses and how much I enjoy them overall. So just a little interjection. But overall, once again with this song, I think it's another solid, fun song. It's fast-paced, got another really good riff. A good message. The chorus is decent. It's not anything super special, super out of the ordinary. The vocals are a little distracting, but once again, I think this is another pretty solid song, so I'm going to give Screaming Suicide a 3. Moving on to their fourth song on this album, and that is Sleepwalk My Life Away. Now, they started off really strong, but now they take a dip here. I'm not the biggest fan of this song. And it's a very serviceable song. It's not particularly bad, but it's not exactly interesting where I ever think I would come back and listen to it again. Now, one thing that I will definitely give to this song's credit, and actually to this entire album, is that the first thing I noticed when I listened to the song is the bass work on this is way more in the forefront, way more prevalent and interesting than most Metallica albums in general. I'm glad they're finally giving Rob some time to shine. But that's really the only super interesting thing that I noticed from this song. Also, Screaming Suicide's got some good bass work. Other than that, I think the main riff is just kind of it's just kind of generic and lazy. The main chorus, it's interesting, it's all right. I can't say it's exactly catchy. Once again, it's an interesting meaning to the song, but overall, this just kind of feels kind of just generic, kind of middle of the road song. Nothing I'd actually, come back to and be interested in listening to again, but not a bad song overall, but I'm gonna have to give Sleepwalk My Life Away a skip. Moving on to their next song, this is where I think they shake it up big time, and that is You Must Burn. Interesting name to a song, and I think it doesn't really fit what type of song it really is. An aggressive title like You Must Burn, I was expecting a nice, hardcore, thrashy song. It kind of reminded me of like Hit the Lights, You Must Burn, but this is the absolute polar opposite to what I was expecting. This song, it's almost got like a doom riff. It's something that they do a handful of times on this album, where I was very shocked. They have a lot of very slow, deep, chuggy riffs to it. And while I respect trying to do something new, I think absolutely just these slow riffs do not work at all with Metallica's style. Metallica's the best when they're doing fast, punchy in the face, thrashy riffs, and these slow, doomy riffs just feel incredibly out of place. And that is one, I think, big takeaway I have from this album, is it has overall a lot of really good stuff, but a lot of really good stuff that feels incredibly out of place. For one, these deep, chuggy riffs are good, but they feel like they don't quite fit. Another thing, I think a lot of the James Hetfield's vocals, the lyrics, some of the choruses even, are interesting. They feel like they fit better on another album. Some of the guitar solos, which I'll touch on later, are good, but they feel completely misplaced. The only thing that's fairly consistent and good, like it usually is for Metallica, are just the riffs. Obviously, James Hetfield is a riff master, and he's just really great at constructing a catchy, interesting riff. But so many other of the pieces just feel like they're good. They just try to fit them in where they didn't quite work. So that's just what this song in particular feels like. It feels like it was a swing and a miss. They tried something new. It just didn't work at all for Metallica. So I'm going to give You Must Burn another skip. Moving on to another single, and their first single, and that is Lux AEterna. This is probably my favorite on the album. I know this one is kind of a love it or you hate it song. I'm definitely in you love it camp. Maybe it's partially because I love power metal, and this is, you know, their fastest, most just fun, aggressive song. It's not exactly a heavy song. It's more of a light rock-esque song, but I love pretty much everything about this song. The main riff on it is excellent. James's singing is probably better in this song than pretty much any of the rest of the album, so major props there. Obviously, I love the fast-paced, you know, just aggressive flow to it is super fun. Pretty much the only thing that isn't good about this song, in my opinion, is just, man, that guitar solo. I do not know if Kirk Hammett is just losing his style, or what, but it's just not good. Like, whereas other guitar solos on this album, at least, I was like, okay, that's a good guitar solo, but it doesn't quite fit with this song. This guitar solo is just bad, just in general. So this song, it could have been, if it didn't have the guitar solo, I could see myself giving it a low 5. But because of the trash guitar solo, I'm going to have to give it a 4. Still a very good song overall, just fast, fun, to the point. But man, what were they doing with those guitar solos? It's crazy. But yeah, moving on to their next song, and that is Crown of Barbed Wire. This one feels very reminiscent of kind of the style that they're going for with You Must Burn. It kind of feels like they're swinging for the fences, they're trying something new, and it ultimately doesn't work. Kind of a common theme for, I think, a lot of this album. This has got another kind of slow, more, I don't know, doomy, progressive style riff, I don't know. And I actually really love the riff on that one, the or correction, this one. The riff is super interesting, but once again, I don't think it quite fits with Metallica's style or with the song overall. And pretty much everything else in the song, I think, is completely throwaway. I think the chorus is incredibly weird, incredibly boring. Pretty much, the guitar solo, once again, not great. It's too long. A lot of the songs in this album just feel incredibly bloated. It's just not a great song overall, not one I'd ever choose to come back to. So once again, I'm going to give Crown of Barbed Wire a skip. Next up, I've got Chasing Light. It's between this one and another song as to which is my least favorite on the album. This one, it's not a bad song, but it feels like absolutely the epitome of a filler track, where nothing is done particularly bad, but it's one of the songs you hear it and you immediately forget about it. There's one part, the chorus, where he's like, "Kneel on me," but that's really the only even slightly memorable part about this song. Just generic riffs, generic guitar solo, generic lyrics. Everything is just incredibly generic. Another really disappointing, just lame track that should have been cut from the album. Chasing Light is a skip. After, a couple of skips there, we're finally getting back to a little bit of a better track, in my opinion. That's the last single from the album, If Darkness Had a Sun. Once again, another single that I didn't much care for it when I first heard it. But it has grown on me, just like most of the other singles. Not quite as much as the other ones, because I still think there's a lot of problems with this song, but I do think there is a lot to like about this song. Now, I'll say probably the main reason I didn't really like this song when I first listened to it is, and something I still hold on to as being true, is that the main chorus is incredibly weird, incredibly off-putting. The whole, if darkness had a sun, here I am, da 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 da. It feels incredibly out of place. I'm not a big fan of it. Also, one part I've grown to like a little bit more, where he's like, temptation, I kind of like that now. But once again, it gives me massive Saint Anger vibes, because I don't know if any of you have seen the documentary Some Kind of Monster. They had a cut song from Saint Anger called Temptation. I don't know if it's anything like this song, but it makes me wonder if some of these songs are reworked cuts from Saint Anger, potentially this song. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But back on track, why do I actually like this song? I just think it has one of the best riffs in the entire album. Just the riffs and just the rest instrumentals. Actually, the drumming is really solid too. That's actually one thing I haven't mentioned. Besides also the bass work being really good in this album, the drumming too is surprisingly really solid, especially just the production on the drums. So that's definitely an opposite to Saint Anger. But yeah, the main riff, it's catchy, it's heavy, it's fun. The main chorus leaves a lot to be desired, but overall, this is just, it's a decent song. So overall, I'd say if this song had a stronger chorus, it could get a higher score, but it's still an alright song, so I'm gonna give If Darkness Had a Sun a 2. Alright, next up, we've got Too Far Gone. Now, this is kind of a hard one because there's a lot to like about this song. It's got some actually a pretty fun, pretty deep, chuggy riff in there. So pretty good. There's a lot of really good riffs on this album. And then I just think it kind of gets thrown off from the main chorus. Whereas like I like the main chorus kind of individually. When you combine it with the riff, it just feels incredibly off-putting. It feels like two separate ideas that they tried to throw together. It's got this fun, just like upbeat rock chorus that they throw in this heavy, chuggy riff to it. And it just feels like two separate disjointed ideas that ultimately make just an incredibly kind of mediocre type song. So sadly, I'm gonna give Too Far Gone another skip. Moving on to Room of Mirrors. Now this song, it's tough because I think the second half of this song I really dig. Especially once again, I'm saying so many of these riffs are just really solid. The second half they throw in this new like riff or this new just chord or string of stuff. You'll know it when you hear it, and it's really great. But man, the lyrics on this song are just so trash. This is another that once again it gives me massive Saint Anger vibes when they try to do like all of this wacky rhyme scheme stuff that I remember they do a ton in Saint Anger. They do a little bit of that in Lux AEterna, but I don't mind it too much in that one. But this weird rhyme scheme that they do in this one just makes pretty much all of just the vocals and the chorus just incredibly throwaway. So many of these songs, honestly, if you take out all of the vocals on them and you just make them instrumentals, I would actually listen to them. This is an example. Like for sure, the second half of this song, if you take out the vocals and you make it just purely an instrumental, it's a solid song. But with the vocals, unfortunately, it's not so good. So sadly, once again, I'm going to give Room of Mirrors a skip. And lastly, closing it out, we've got their long, like 11-minute song, Inamorata. I was very curious and interested about this song because it's a lot longer than what Metallica usually does. So I was like, what are they gonna do? It's also got a pretty funky name to it. So I was like, yeah, I'm down for it. But this might be my least favorite on the album. I mean, Chasing Light just felt like a complete filler track, whereas this kind of feels like the complete opposite, where they really tried to go for this long epic ballad, but there's absolutely nothing interesting to it whatsoever. It's just the riffs feel generic, the vocals are boring and generic, and it goes on and on and on. Whereas Chasing Light, at least it's kind of bite-sized, and it's just, you listen to it, you're like, yeah, it's done. This one, it just keeps going, and you keep hoping for it to get better, but it doesn't. So once again, very sadly, it closes out the album on a low note, so I'm going to give Inamorata another skip. All right, so that is all my thoughts on each individual song. So coming back and final thoughts on the album as a whole, I think I've kind of made it clear I'm pretty darn disappointed by this album. Well, I wouldn't say this isn't a bad album by any means. There, as you saw, there is a handful of songs that I very thoroughly enjoyed in there. But besides, you know, the 4 singles, I liked all of the singles. There's only one non-single on this album that I thought was worth anything. There's 7 skip tracks. There's just a lot of very filler tracks on there. I appreciate this album. It does feel like they tried something new. They tried some weird doomy riffs. They tried this long epic song, but it feels like they just kind of threw stuff at the wall and it didn't exactly stick. I think this it might be a result of just COVID, where they were just jamming out some stuff over Zoom, and then they're just like, okay, let's try this, let's try that, and it just didn't exactly work for the most part. I like that. I mean, it was kind of distinct in a certain way just by being kind of all over the place. But it also, once again, it reminds me of Load, Reload, Saint Anger, and Hardwired to Self-Destruct. And being reminiscent of other albums isn't a bad thing either, but it would have been better if they were reminiscent of better Metallica albums, if it was reminiscent of, I don't know, Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, and Injustice. We would have an absolutely different album on our hands. But unfortunately, you know, this doesn't exactly do anything to set the bar higher, to reestablish Metallica as, you know, the thrash juggernaut that they once were. It's just kind of a good album that absolutely could have and should have been great if they just knew how to trim some fat and put the pieces together in a more coherent and satisfying way. But overall, tallying up all of these points, I subtract 1 point for each skip, and for every 5 skips, I take away an additional 3 points. So doing all the math there, this album gets 7 points. It's in my solid tier. I think it's a solid album. It's not great, it's not bad, it's just solid. I think I've got the tiers, how I rank them right there. When I first listened to this album, I didn't really like it at all. I think I would have given it in the mediocre tier, but it has grown on me a little bit. The good songs in this album are really solid, and they hold it up as not a bad album. But man, there is just so much just misfires and filler and just not so good stuff that this absolutely does not meet its potential whatsoever. But that's going to conclude my thoughts on 72 Seasons. Let me know in the comments, did you like this album? Did you not like this album? Let me know what were your favorite tracks. I'm going to be getting out another video fairly soon where I re-rank all of the Metallica albums, worst to best, so stay tuned for that. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Consider liking and subscribing. But yeah, that is all I've got for you today, so I will see you later.